what's the most impressive thing on this list? Former player.
Okay.
Former scout.
Yeah.
Analyst, NFL media, Fox Sports Radio, head coach, Granada Hills. What's the most impressive thing?
You left out the single most impressive thing.
What is it?
Handsome bald guy. I mean, hello.
I don't know why that hits you so much.
Because I aspire to be that. Like, he is bald. He's as bald as I am, and he's handsome. I hope to someday be a handsome bald guy, an HPG.
There you go. Someday. Yep. River Island's guest line. It's Bucky Brooks. What do you think about his chances, Bucky?
I mean, look, man. There's always a chance.
You're like that.
He's a former scout.
Yeah, former scout. You got a chance. We can do this.
Bucky, you will remember this. Last year, around this time, we're sitting here with you. We're breaking down the NFC West. And we went back to this later in the year. You wouldn't even know this. It wasn't news that you picked the Rams to win the division. What was interesting to us was the tone that you used. You were like, oh, the Rams. Like, duh. Now, first and foremost, you were wrong. They did not win the division, but I thought it'd be fun to get the exact same answer again this year.
Yeah, they should have won the division.
I mean, I hear you.
They're 100% winning the division this year.
Oh, damn. You leaned in for that one.
Man.
I saw how close you got to the camera for that one.
Got a little less handsome on that one.
That was uncomfortable.
I don't know if you read the transactions, but Aaron Donald had another workout at the facility. He's just primed and ready to reappear and show up for them. And so then you have to deal with the prospect of, I mean, you know how they do down here in L.A.? Like, if you're going to build a championship team in L.A., it's about the stars. You look no further than the Dodgers and how the Dodgers have constructed it. When the Dodgers win, they win with star power. The L.A. Rams are certainly following the blueprint. You think about Myles Garrett coming over. They get Trent McDuffie. They get Jalen Watkins. They already have Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua on the offensive side. Star power is everything to L.A. And if they get Aaron Donald to go with the reigning defensive player of the year, you can write the ticket that they're going to win the division and maybe more.
And what's the weakness then? I mean, is the Puka Nacua thing still unresolved, or beyond that? Like, what do you see from the Rams that makes them a little bit vulnerable?
Well, I mean, look, injuries are always a big part of it. And an injury to the quarterback, an injury to one of those notable players certainly can hurt them. This is a team that typically builds their rosters where they're very, very top heavy, because if you're going to kind of live in the land of stars, you're not going to be able to fortify all areas of their roster. What they do to supplement that is they're unafraid to play young players. And you'll notice that they'll play late round picks. They'll play undrafted guys in prominent spots, but they lean into their stars and they're going to rely heavily on their stars to do it. So an injury obviously would be detrimental to Matthew Stafford or anything like that. But outside of that, if it comes down to playing ball and they have the majority of their guys healthy and ready to play, it's going to be hard to beat the Rams. Yeah,
we all know there's only one team out there that can withstand a bunch of injuries. But anyway, how do you see the 49ers and Seahawks factoring into this division that is clearly going to be won by the Rams?
I mean, the Seahawks are going to be right there. They're defending champions. Now, the hard thing is going back-to-back, because now there's a different energy that they're going to face from the opponents that play them. They're now the measuring stick. And so last year, I got a chance to see them early in the year when they knocked off Jacksonville. They were able to kind of fly under the radar. And if you really look at the way it was, they snatched the division at the end. I mean, the Niners had it all right there for them. They were the number one seed in the NFC going into the final weeks of the season. And then Seattle kind of jumps on top and wins it. It'll be different for Seattle. Everyone will go against them. They'll face a different level of energy. And there's a reason why we haven't seen back-to-backs. It is just very, very difficult to do, to bring your A game 17 weeks in a row.
When you look at the Niners coming back from last year, and Mark had mentioned it, where they had a bunch of injuries, they had a backup quarterback start almost half of the games. Where do you think that their step up comes from this year with a team that gets Nick Bosa back and hopefully Fred Warner healthy and more?
No, look, man, if their guys return, like, they're certainly one of the tougher teams. Here's the thing, the division is a heavyweight division. Those three teams, the Niners, the Rams, the Seahawks, they all could win the big one. the thing is, it comes down to a war of attrition. And unfortunately, for whatever the reason, the Niners have always kind of been banged up and beat up. And I know they've talked about changing their practice habits and some of those other things, but they have got to get their guys to the starting line and to the finish line. Because if they're able to preserve the health of their stars, there's not a team that they can't beat. The issue has been they've been unable to do that. So if they can figure that part out, look, the Niners have as good a chance as anybody in the division to win it all.
NFL media, Bucky Brooks, former player, former scout, with us here on Willard and Dibbs 95.7 The Game. Are you a big De'Zhaun Stribling guy? What do you think?
I mean, I was one of the guys that felt strongly about him. I know the consensus boards went crazy when the Niners took him in the second round. There's a lot of outrage and consternation. How could they take a guy that the world didn't know about, but everyone on the inside was all on? And I think early he's kind of shown you what people were excited about. Big, fast, and physical, can make plays. And even though I love hearing George Kittle talk about how Shanahan kind of corrected him and kind of called him out and brought him down a peg, I love what I'm seeing and I love what I'm hearing about how he goes about his business for the longest time. And you guys took me to task when I talked about the wide receivers and lack of route runners and all this other stuff. They got one. He is going to be a good player because if the Niners didn't take him, he was going to be snapped up shortly thereafter. He's a good player, and I'm glad he's been able to show it in spite of all the naysayers coming at him early right after draft day.
Bucky, just for fun, I know we've all turned the page on that portion of it, but why? Why was it so under the radar? Why was he hidden?
I mean, look, the media guys don't know everything.
Well, I mean,
all the media scouts and all the people that were prognosticating who was going to go and whatever, he just flew under the radar. But what I can tell you is, in having conversations with scouts closer to the draft, there's a lot of love in the streets for him. And guys did a really good job of keeping their mouths shut and not talking to their sources or to their people outside, because everyone kind of had him pegged as their guy, particularly in the top of the second round. So it's just one of those things that there's always a surprise or two, a late riser in terms of the media world. He was that guy, but there were a lot of people that were on him. And look, man, there was conversation he was going to be a first-round pick. So it's just one of those things. He goes, and when he went, people are surprised. But it's one of the reasons why we can't get caught up in like a group think tank, the herd mentality. Sometimes teams are privy to more information than us on the outside.
And is part of that just the nature of like the big schools and the big names and the big guys that all of us amateurs see on Saturday versus somebody like De'Zhaun Stribling who was putting out good tape in a lesser profile spot?
No, it's just so much conversation, right? And I love it, right? Obviously, like I've made a living kind of being a draftnik and kind of being on it, but we're not privy to everything. And sometimes things get lost. And a lot of times on our side, like we talk about herd mentality, it takes one analyst to start talking about somebody, then we all flock to that because there's this desire to be right on draft night, where scouts in the world, in the scouting community, they're trying to be right 2-3 years down the road. And the reason why people were high on him is because of the physicality, because of the speed, because of the size, and because he fit this offensive system. Because there's so many offshoots of the Shanahan-McVay system, there's an entire faction of people in the NFL that loved him because he played like they want their wide receivers to play. But the physicality and toughness to be able to block on the edge, to make things happen when the ball gets in his hands. And so the one thing that we're not privy to when we're media scouts is how teams plan to utilize him. We can rank people on talent, but fit and scheme is everything. And that drives some of the movement on draft boards. And that's why he might have been a hidden gem or an unknown commodity to so many of us on the outside.
Bucky, we'll circle right back to the 49ers, but my eye was grabbed by this piece that you did a week ago with regard to the running back comparison, Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson, and you called it the toughest running back comparison that you've ever done. I mean, you can answer this as an NFL answer or a fantasy football answer, however you want, but what did you come up with when you compare those two players?
Man, they are everything that you want in the running back. And I'll say it, the guy that you have right in San Francisco, he kind of started the movement. He and Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara. Even when Le'Veon Bell, and it's funny now that Le'Veon Bell won't get the credit, but when Le'Veon Bell was holding out for more money and he talked about being an RB1 wide receiver 2, being a hybrid at the position, well, we've seen Christian McCaffrey do it, where he's had 1,000 and 1,000. He's had 100 catches and 1,000 rushing yards and those things. These guys fall in line with that. And when you look at Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson, it's a matter of what are you banking on. Jahmyr Gibbs gives you all the pizzazz, the splash plays as a runner and a receiver. Bijan Robinson gives you the steady production with some flash and some big playability. To me, it was really difficult because what do you hang your hat on? And the only reason I nodded towards Bijan Robinson is because he's having to do more with less around him. But shoot, man, Jahmyr Gibbs is a game changer. And as long as you get those running backs that can do it in both facets, that's the way that you have to have the modern running back. And it's proven that the running back isn't dead because I'm seeing them get those big paychecks. So I feel good about running backs being a big part of the championship puzzle.
No doubt. And also one thing that we've all been talking about here, Bucky, is the idea of Christian McCaffrey and, the touches last year, and you got to bubble wrap him. It can't be that much. Is it different when you see a guy with 102 catches among his touches? Are those touches less, I guess, aggressive and violent than the running touches?
Yes, and the reason why you can feel confident in paying a Christian McCaffrey or Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson is because I always talk about being able to age gracefully. So when they get older and they're not necessarily able to run between the tackles with the same vigor, what you can do is you can put them out in space. You can throw option routes and swings and those things. And then it goes from being one guy against 11 to 1-on-2, 2-on-2, a blocker. And so the contact isn't as violent as it would be when he's running between the tackles. So for Christian McCaffrey, I would expect to see it kind of flip, maybe fewer carries, more receptions, same production, because at the end of the day, for the first, like the last 5 years, you hear coaches talk more about scrimmage yards as opposed to rushing yards. And scrimmage yards is a combination of rushing and receiving yards that you total out. More guys are focused on the scrimmage yards totals as opposed to just what they're able to get on the ground.
Bucky, how do you read the Christian McCaffrey situation right now? He has missed practice for about a week. They're just calling it tightness. They haven't even told us tightness of what. And some have noticed that the timing of him watching practice just came right after Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson both got new contracts.
He's gotten paid. I think Christian McCaffrey is probably suffering from what the three of us suffer from. When you get old, you get some of that soreness and tightness. I get tight just for no reason. Like it's a Monday. My back is tight. So maybe Christian McCaffrey is suffering from aging. But I don't think it's a direct shot at like what's going on with the running back position. But I do know he had a lot of yards. He had a lot of production. Yep. And the one thing that makes all the owies go away, a direct deposit that crosses across your screen, this has a bunch of commas and a bunch of zeros. So maybe, just maybe, they can get that bank masseuse to kind of help him loosen up some of those tight muscles.
The old bank masseuse.
Bank masseuse.
I do too.
I might remember that one. Bank masseuse.
I mean, seriously, like you don't even need the teller. You just need to like get that app on your phone and you look and all of a sudden you feel better. I wonder what you think, Bucky, about the upcoming trip to Australia where the Niners are going to go 8 days in advance and the Rams are looking to just get in and get out. As a former player, which one makes more sense to you?
I've seen it done successfully both ways. Going with the Jaguars broadcast team, I've seen teams come over and spend a bunch of time over there and kind of say that they want to get acclimated. And then I saw the Rams last year go over there, and I don't even know if they spent 36 hours in London and issued a straight beatdown. So I think at the end of the day, it'll be the result that tells you who did it right. I know the Rams have tried to minimize the amount of time that they're overseas, and that's worked for them. But that's not to say that their way is right. I think ultimately you try to put your team in the best position to play at their best. We'll see. Look, it's an oddity because you're going so far away to play a game in the middle of the week. It's just a different thing. But look, I'm sure the sports science has given the Niners an indication of how this will turn out if they do it right. We'll see if it plays out like the science will say.
There are a lot of question marks around individuals. I know this game is still 3.5 weeks away. Kittle is giving a shot right now that he may play. I know the NFL is still reviewing things on the Puka Nacua situation. Let's look at that one for a second. How different would the Rams be in that game if Nacua's not going?
Well, the one thing that Sean McVay is he's a masterful play designer, and he will create opportunities for whoever steps in that place, and that'll probably be Devontae Adams. You'll probably see more run action with Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. You'll see them find a way to get the ball to Devontae Adams. And one of the things that the Rams have done that the league is copycatting, all those tight ends on the field at one time. 13 personnel, 1 wide receiver, 3 tight ends, 1 running back. They have done that, and they'll continue to do that if they don't have the big fella out there. But, look, it's going to be a rock'em sock'em robot type game anyway. When these two teams get down, they don't really like each other. It is a bit of a rivalry, even though the Niners may not see it as a rivalry. But down here in SoCal, they certainly circle that game because it's a big one. And so I think it'll be one of those games where we will see the best of both teams, regardless of the personnel that's available.
You mentioned the 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends. What does that do to a defense when you see that personnel package come in? Do you have to automatically just get into your base because you're afraid that your nickel won't be able to stop the run if they choose to run it?
There's so many different things that teams can do out of that. And depending on the complementary skills of the 3 tight ends that are in the game, normally what you have is one guy that is a true blocker, another guy that is a true wide receiver, and then the third guy is like a mixed player. And what that does is it forces you to make tough decisions. If you put all your bigs on the field, the wide receiver, the receiving tight end is going to give you problems because they'll empty it out. They'll put him out wide, and then you have him against an overmatched safety or a linebacker. If you put the little guys on the field in anticipation of the passing game, they can run right at you. And the part that people don't talk about, the extra gaps that are created when you put all 3 tight ends beside each other on one side. Now you're dealing with basically an unbalanced formation. How do you bump to that? How do you handle that? And then when you get the motions and shifts and all the different things that you can do, it's a headache. But because they unveiled it last year when people weren't ready for it, this year everyone spent the offseason preparing for it. They'll be better prepared to face it. But knowing McVay and some of these other coaches, they're already on to the next thing. They'll break something else out that'll send everyone running to the sideline to figure out how to make an adjustment to some unforeseen formation that they're trying out.
While we're nerding out on X's and O's, I wanted to make sure I got an answer from you on this one. Bucky Brooks, NFL Media, and for people who don't know, you were a former DB. And the DBs here in San Francisco are singing the praises of Raheem Morris. Not shots at Robert Saleh, but they think that this is going to be better set up for them. And I was looking at last year's DVOA for teams. Rams had the number 1 offense. Niners were number 2. Rams had the number 4 defense. Niners were number 27. Talk to me about what you think Raheem Morris is going to do differently and what the Niner defense may end up looking like because of it.
Well, obviously his viewpoint, right? Robert Saleh saw the game from front to back, whereas Raheem Morris may see it from back to front, meaning that he'll think about the coverage and then build the front around how he wants to play in the back end. What I will say, like Raheem Morris is one of the best defensive coordinators that this league is seeing and one of the best defensive back developers that is seen. So what he's going to do is put these guys in a situation to play tighter. I expect them to be very similar to how they've been in the past. They've more from being a cover 3 team, a 3D team that was running a lot of the old Seattle Seahawks system to being more quarters based. And what that does is playing a matchup zone where you can match up and pass things off on crossing routes, and those things you can get tighter and stickier when they're running vertical things. So they'll do that. I just think they'll have maybe a little more diversity in the back end to maybe give quarterbacks more problems. But I also know this. Kyle Shanahan wants to see certain things on defense. Raheem add his own touch to what they were doing. But I'm going to say this, man. They've had a lot of success for a long time with an offshoot of that Seattle-based system. I think it'd be very similar to that. He'll just put his own touch on it.
Bucky, either conference, give me one team right now you think is laying in the weeds. No one's talking about them, but you think they could be dangerous.
Laying in the weeds. You know, I'm going to say this, man. I know the Niner fans are going to be mad at me because this is a bitter rivalry that goes all the way back.
Oh, say it.
Them Cowboys are back. The Cowboys are back.
I agree with you. I think they win the division.
Yeah, the Cowboys are going to be a problem. And I know it's been 30 years since they hoisted the Lombardi, but this year they got a legitimate chance to do it because defensively, Christian Parker coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles is going to give them that Vic Fangio system where they don't give up explosive plays. And offensively, if you know, with Dak Prescott and company, if they can get 30, now it's about just making sure that on defense, you don't give up the big plays, you die a slow death, and you find a way to take advantage of the turnovers. The Cowboys are solid and legit. And I know every year, man, it's like the boy that cries wolf. Right. I go into the building and be like, this is the year. The Cowboys are back. But legitimately, this is the year that the Cowboys might be back.